Chapter 4, Lesson 5, Scatter Plots and Lines. So a scatter plot is something that shows the relationship between a set of data with two variables. And when we have two variables, we know that we graph them, so they are graphed as ordered pairs on a coordinate plane. So we take data that has two different variables. So we might be, usually we're comparing two things. We might be comparing people's age with their height, or we might be comparing people's age with the number of pets they have. If we're plotting this on a graph, it's usually on some type of a scatter plot. It needs to be two numerical values. Now, in reality, is what happens is when I gather this data and I graph it on a coordinate plane, most data does not make a straight line, right? So it's not linear when we plot that data. But as what happens is that the data does create what we just talked about, a scatter plot, right? And often that data has some sort of a relationship called a trend, or sometimes we also call it a correlation. And you may have heard those two words before, but it's some sort of a relationship between the data, even if it doesn't create an exact straight line. Now, some of our data is going to have a positive correlation. And a positive correlation is, it looks like a positive slope, but is what happens is we plot our data and we plot these dots, and we find that in general, the trend, not the entire data creates an exact line, but the trend is that our data is going in this positive relationship. And our positive correlation means as the x increases, so as we go along the x-axis and the x is increasing, right? As the x gets bigger, our y is also getting bigger. So as the x increases, the y also increases. In a negative correlation, it's kind of the opposite, right? We plot our data. And we notice, okay, well, it's not going in a straight line, but the trend is that as the x is increasing, as this x is getting bigger, our y has this trend or this correlation to go negative. So as the x increases, the y value decreases. But sometimes when we plot the data, we look at it and we say, okay, here's a dot, 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 and we plot all of our data, and there is no correlation. As our x is increasing, sometimes the y increases, sometimes it decreases. There's absolutely no correlation or relationship between the two. Now, so what we can do is after we have graphed that data, we're going to draw what we call our line of fit. And our line of fit is a line that models the trend, or that correlation, right? That positive or negative. And it is the line that is closest to as many data points as possible. So we're just trying to draw a line that, if we could try to somehow draw a line that kind of makes sense between those dots, what would our line of fit be? Okay, now when we use a line of fit, is how we do that is we first make a scatter plot. So we plot all the points, and we determine the relationship. We first have to decide if it's a positive correlation, a negative correlation, or maybe there's no correlation. If there's no correlation, we don't draw a line of fit. So we make a scatter plot, and then we draw the line of fit. the line that is as close to many data points. And then we're actually going to write an equation that shows that line of fit, that is the equation of the line. So we are going to use 2 points on the line of fit to write an equation that we've learned how to do this chapter. And then we use the equation or the line to make predictions. We can plug values into the equation, or we can just look at the line and see what we think is going to happen.